welcome to the Safety and Risk Success podcast with me, Christian Harris. I'm joined today by Shonagh Methven of United Response, who's head of safety there, and we have a really fascinating conversation spanning everything from politics, where Shonagh had a number of years working, through to Grenfell, people-centered risk, and a great phrase that Shonagh came up with today, which is being optimistically discontent about safety. I'm sure you'll get a lot from this. There are some great lessons to be learned, whatever sector you are in. So I hope you enjoy it. Cheers.
Welcome to the Safety and Risk Success podcast with Christian Harris. We believe that proactive safety and risk management powers business performance. Each week we explore this theme, sharing guests, stories, insights, trends, hints and tips. You can find us on all the major podcasting platforms, and video versions are available on YouTube. But for now, let's join the conversation with Christian.
Thank you, Shonagh, for joining me today.
That's fine.
I've been looking forward to this conversation, and we're both well rested after a short break. So hopefully our energy levels are high, and we can talk about some exciting stuff. I thought I'd start by just asking you, how did it feel to get your sort of highly commended award, I suppose, for the Health and Safety Trailblazer SHP Awards recently? How did that feel?
Thanks, Christian, and thanks for inviting me. It felt great, actually. One sits in an office, sits here. I sit here and I do things and I suggest things and try to make things happen. And sometimes it feels sort of like I'm just here by myself. Other people get involved, but actually, is it working? Is it any good? Does it make a difference? And while I feel very positive about working within my own organisation, within United Response, to be recognised by peers, and certainly by SHP, that I rely on most days when those emails coming through to give me updates or to attend webinars, was just brilliant. It was such a nice surprise.
Yeah, I was going to say, was it a surprise? Was somebody had nominated you or something? Yeah.
Yes, and it was, and I'm not backwards in coming forwards at all. In terms of us, United Response, in terms of me, in terms of health and safety, and so I have quite a lot of contacts out in the health and safety sphere, and just talking to people, they were saying you should definitely put yourself in for this. You should definitely, and I talked over with a number of people, sent the application to a few people and said, am I bigging myself up? Is this real? Does this reflect what I'm doing with people within the organisation as well? And they all said, yeah, just put it in. It's good work. And even if it wasn't recognised in that way, one of my other plans was to try to put something else in SHP, in Safety and Health Practitioner, just to say, look, this is something I'm trying, and the more of us who try, the better it'll be.
Yeah. I remember a few years ago, there's an awards ceremony in Birmingham, allied to one of the health and safety shows. I always forget the names of them. And we had entered an award, and we didn't had absolutely no expectation at all of doing anything with it. And then about 2 days before, somebody said to me, well, but you're going to go to the awards dinner, aren't you? And I was like, oh, I haven't actually signed up to go to it. I was going to go to the show. And then I sort of, okay, well, I'll see if there's a last minute space. And so I did. And then, we also got for the award we went to, we got the sort of highly commended. So we didn't win, but we, our name got flashed up as highly commended. And it was like, oh, wow, we got a little plaque. And and it is really great to get that feedback, isn't it, from your peers?
It is. We had a founder called Sue Sayre, and she was very big on we should shout about ourselves. If we're doing something good, we should do that. And actually, I attended an award ceremony with her a few years ago. Her big thing was, what colour are you wearing? We wouldn't want to clash. And I was like, I don't really think that way, but tell me what you're wearing and I'll make sure I don't clash with you. And that was for something called a stamp of support, which is absolutely integral to the things that I do. And it says to staff, act reasonably. Even if things go wrong, we'll always support you, but act reasonably. And it's predicated on you can talk to other people about whether your thinking's reasonable or not. So we went along to this thing in Birmingham too, and we didn't win. And it was sort of halfway through the evening, and she said, I'm not disappointed, and I'm not disappointed in you, but I'm going home now. And I thought, okay. I stayed a bit longer and had a bit more to drink after my chief exec left. But it's brilliant, I think, for people within any sphere to just feel that there's a recognition there of you're trying new stuff.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I always encourage people to put themselves out there, whether it be on social media or doing talks or writing articles or attending awards, because I think you can learn a lot, but also having that pat on the back is really beneficial. And also, if you're doing good work, then actually you should want to share it, and so others can learn from it and implement the good stuff that you're doing in their own organisation as well.
Yeah, I do find SHP and IOSH really useful for that. Piggybacking on other people's ideas is exactly what I want to do.
Yeah, no, definitely. So putting yourself out there and getting feedback from your peers is important, and that kind of has a slight segue into your previous career in politics. So I wondered if you could sort of compare and contrast the role of a chief whip versus the role of a head of safety.
Yeah. I was chief whip in Islington Council. I was a Labour councillor. And one of the exciting things there was that the council was equally matched. We had 25 councillors and there were 25 councillors on the other side. And so one of the things I had to learn quite quickly was to corral everybody, to make sure that they all turned up at everything, because we needed all those 25 votes. But also that we had to, and one can imagine any political party, it's very difficult to get everyone to agree. You only need to open the paper or read your phone and know that that's hard. So there was a learning there in terms of corralling everyone together, and certainly people with bigger egos than I find in my organisation. My organisation is an empathetic one. It's social care. One of the things I came into was an organisation which was based on empathy, and I was drawn to the health and safety sphere because I'm quite a logical person. I like the legal based stuff. I know what the Act says. I know what the regs say. And so there was a difference in corralling all of, and we wouldn't call them egomaniacs because some of them might see this, but corralling everyone who's a politician who stood up and said, vote for me because I'd be good at this, corralling them to do something, and then coming into an organisation where people are much quieter. They wear their expertise lightly within our organisation. They are great at what they do in terms of supporting people with either health conditions like epilepsy or learning disabilities or autism. So I came in here and it was people saying, well, I don't know about this. I don't know, I'm not the expert. I'm this or that or the other. And I suppose that was what I came in and found, that kind of wearing expertise lightly, not always being confident in things that either that they do know about, social care, or certainly about things that they don't know anything about. They think they don't know what health and safety is. It might be something that's a bit frightening. So the politics side, of course, as well, has something very similar. I think people go into health and safety because they want to make sure, in that wonderful phrase that staff go home as safe and well at the end of the day as when they arrived in the morning. So there's a person-centred approach there in social care. And I think that people go into politics because, well, for a number of reasons, I'm sure, but one of them is that public service. How can everyone's life be a little bit better? How can people have more money in their pocket or more freedom, or their kids have a better chance at education, or the NHS runs better? there are similarities, I think, between going into politics and going into health and safety. Although I think the ego slightly less in health and safety.
Yes, I mean, hopefully the thing about public service is relevant to the better politicians, but perhaps some of the less good politicians maybe have slightly different focuses and reasons for doing what they do.
I suppose, to quote someone, you may think that. I don't think I could possibly comment.
um, when it comes to safety, what role do you think politics has played in safety, and maybe what role could they play? And I suppose thinking about that kind of from a helicopter level, we're
Yeah,
into a discussion, or potentially into a discussion about kind of being a bit more libertarian, hands off. Companies do what they want versus being a bit more authoritarian. Here are some stricter rules and regulations, and where would you sort of see the ideal situation being in there? A few questions there. Sorry.
yeah, no, that's okay. And remind me if I head off somewhere and
Mm,
don't answer some bits of that. Um, I mean, I think if you look back in a history lesson, and one thing I would say is my degree's in politics, but my love of learning is about everything. And so if you look at the Robins Report, which led to the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974, before that it was screws had to be this long, and the offices, shops and railway premises and the mining and all that. It was all very, we'll tell you what to do.
yeah.
And what I quite liked about the Robins Report, written under Labour, brought in under the Conservatives, was this idea that the people who introduce the risks have the responsibility for managing them. I think that's still true today. It's how I work, it's how health and safety works, and I really like it. And so it moved from we will tell you what to do, pre the Health and Safety Commission and Health and Safety Executive, to you know your business best, you need to do something. And I suppose the libertarian argument might argue, why do you need to do something? And for me, I go back to my kind of moral stuff of people should leave your business as safe at the end of the day as when they arrive. And if there are risks in your business, and I mean, they're not like the mines anymore, they're not like the factories anymore, but you look at, stress or stuff that happened during the pandemic where people felt that they had to work all hours, that they felt that they were forced to go into an office where it felt more dangerous in terms of infection because they weren't trusted to stay at home. It was it was that kind of libertarian idea of, well, you don't need to do anything, and that might be a mischaracterization. I get that, but I don't subscribe to that. My thing is, if you have a business, in both senses of the word, it's your business. It's your business to make sure that it is enacted safely, and I think that's just part of what you do when you run a business. I mean, I understand I work in a charity sector, I work in a social care sector. It's fairly highly regulated, and that's actually helpful. So that's where I come from. For me, if there are people who know things that I don't know, who can help me get things right, I welcome that. I don't think that anyone should sit there and go, I know everything about this, and it's not your business to help me or oversee me. So I'm not a libertarian in that way at all. It's much more about everyone working together.
It's just interesting to think of it in the sense, because we're coming up obviously to 50 years, aren't we, of since the Health and Safety at Work Act. I think there's going to be some stuff going on from IOSH you mentioned, and I know CIH are going to be doing something which I'll be helping them with on webinars and things like that to celebrate that as well. So yeah, it's always interesting to think about that. The bit that I sort of sometimes struggle with is the slight woolliness in some of the phraseology around, what's reasonably practicable and so on. And I wonder whether
trivial risk. What's a trivial? It's the management regs, and they talk about significant risks and trivial risks. And And it goes right back to your business, do what you need to do, no matter what's trivial or what's significant. But when you look at that regulation, and it may have changed, I haven't looked at it for a few years, was trivial risks are those which are not significant. Thank you very much. That's not very helpful. But it still goes back to, and that's a responsibility, which is, what do I think are significant risks within the business that I work in? And I think health and safety leads itself to really good evidential stuff. What happened in the past? What happened in the past? Because that's pretty much what is likely to happen in the future, unless I do something else. So I quite like the clarity in health and safety. If I can go back to politics versus health and safety, in politics, for me, it comes from there. It comes from there and there. I make up my own rules for what I think is right and wrong and what I think should be happening in the world. The thing in terms of safety is lots of other people who are cleverer and think differently from me have made up this, what I would call almost kind of safe scaffolding around my health and safety thinking. Some of it's called legislation, some of it's called regulation, some of it's called good practice. But I have that scaffolding upon which I can hang decisions. So this thing's happening, and I'm just thinking about some stuff that happened yesterday. This thing's happening. What do I know about what we might be able to do there? So that brings in that combination of what's the health and safety scaffolding, plus what do I know about the business? And what do other people who actually deliver the front line of the business, what can they add to that? So it's about us working together.
Yeah. Having that framework and that those terms of reference to enable you to make the right decision.
Framework's a better word than scaffolding, but I think I must think in 3D.
That must be I like that as a metaphor, because particularly because if you think of it like scaffolding, you can only hang so much of it off if the scaffolding hasn't been set up properly. Because if it's wobbling and it's loose, then it's going to fall down.
Yeah, I've got two boards in my head. That's my my health and safety anorak zipped right to the top.
So, do you think what can safety learn from politics from the perspective of, you mentioned, I think in your SHP interview, that you're an activist. I mean, just speak a little bit to that, because I found that really interesting.
Yes, so I mean, I work in a business which I work in social care in the charitable sector, which is underfunded, and everyone has to do everything that they can with the time that we've got and the money that we have. And so there's an encouragement of creativity, because we don't have loads of money to throw at things. And so activism for me is we need more money to do what we can do. The people that we support, it's a huge privilege to be in their lives. They could be amongst the least considered people, or the least valued people in society. And so you're invited into their life, and we're paid to support them. And so it's a huge privilege to come in and do that. But one has to shout about what we do and why we do it and how well we do it with how poorly it's paid. So there's that. The main thing that was coming out through the SHP award, though, was the stuff about post-Grenfell, and how in the Grenfell, in the dreadful fire that happened there, and so many people lost their lives, I felt there was a lack of preparation in a multi-storey building to recognise that should it go on fire, people would need to get out. People are people. Fire will kill them, and we know it will. And so there should be people should be able to get out. And basically, Grenfell kind of pulled together thinking I'd been doing for quite a while, was that the people that we support, the people with learning disabilities who might not subscribe to societal norms of behaviour, if you or I are in a building and the alarm goes off, we know that says get out, it's dangerous. Not everyone we support would understand that. Or We support people who would use a wheelchair or might even be hoisted out of bed and would take longer to get out of bed. And so the bigger tragedy at Grenfell pulled together some thinking for me, which was, do we have workable, practicable, practiced plans to get everyone, all 1,500 people that we support in different houses with different needs, out of a building? Did we have practical, practiced, reliable plans with staff who were confident about doing it and competent to do it? And so Grenfell brought that back to me. And so if I bring it back to United Response, I went back, worked with all 450 of our managers to work on, do we have those plans? Do we have them? We have time to work out how to do it because our fire prevention is good, but should something happen, do we have those plans? So that came back to United Response, and I did some work there. And as I said before, I'm not very quiet about things, and so I was talking in the social care sphere and the charity sphere about that work and saying to people, we should do this, we should all do this, and we can all work at it. And there are a couple of things that I'm happy to share, a couple of little practical things that I brought into the organisation that I'm happy to share. And so when the Home Office was reaching out to lots of different forums to work on their evacuation and fire safety working group post Grenfell, they heard my name through some health and safety links that I have and through some social care. And so I went and joined that. And so that's, for me, is that proper response to Grenfell, which is people who live in buildings where it will be difficult to get out. We need to have either building stuff that changes, and I know that there's new building regs coming in saying you have to build it out, but in buildings where you can't change that because they've been standing for a long time, how do we put those plans in place where there are no staff to help them? United Response, I wouldn't say it's easy, and certainly our managers wouldn't agree that it was easy, but we start with, there are staff there who know that their job is to get people out. How do you make that into something which happens in society so that people can get out of a building?
And when we spoke before about this, you mentioned that it was about kind of learning the lessons from Grenfell, but without going into the blame area. Could you speak a bit about that?
Yes. I'm a big believer in learning lessons, and I was reading something this morning. I think the NHS is talking about learning lessons, and I think even David Cameron was talking about learning lessons this morning on the BBC. And people bandy that around, and for me, that has to be real. If something bad happens, if you want to get to the bottom of it, the actual bottom of it, you can't just look at the person and say you did something wrong that day. All of us in health and safety know about that triangle, which is about thousands of near misses, then incidents, then serious incidents, and then fatalities. And so if all you do is look at the outcome and investigate big outcomes, then you miss those chances to get something right at the start. So a case from social care. Someone died it must be about 10 years ago now, of a choking incident. I read about this one. And basically this person choked on something that was hard and that they shouldn't have been eating. But if you looked at the history of it, the person had been eating this stuff for about 3 years. And so if there are 1,000 days in 3 years and 3 meals a day, there were 3,000 chances to spot that this was going wrong before the person died. And so the person who was there when they died is not the only one who made the mistake. Therefore, if you just say, you, Shonagh, you were there on that day, it's your fault, we're going to sack you and blah, blah, blah. What you miss is, how could this have happened for 3 years? Where's the oversight? How can people not have spotted 1,000 times that this person, or up to 1,000 times, that this person's eating the wrong thing? And so for me, blaming doesn't work, it's ineffective. Logically, it's ineffective. However, if you look at the person-to-person stuff, if you want the person who was there on the day, or the 50 people who were there on the 1,000 chances to stop it before, if you want them to be honest with you about how this could have happened, you can't make them defensive. It needs to be, you guys know now how, you guys know this went wrong. Help me work out how this went wrong so that we can make it different. That's lessons learned. That for me is that's the positive change afterwards. But like I say, I think people talk about lessons learned and I don't think they're sincere about it. I think either it's a kicking down the road, we'll look at this and we'll work out everything. And I think if you look at the pandemic and the COVID inquiry, people who were bereaved think that's taking far too long, and I kind of agree with them. But the bottom line is, all of those people wouldn't have died for a number of reasons. There are a number, and we all know those. No, we don't know them all actually, but we all know that there are a number, and we need to get to all of them so that if COVID 24 or 25 or 26 hits, we know the things we need to do differently in all of those cases. Is that helpful? Is that what you're after?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's blame is an interesting emotion or response, isn't it? Because in my field, for example, there's a lot of blame put on the person who fell over, and it's almost an instinctive reaction. Is, well, they must have been rushing, or they must have been wearing the wrong shoes, or they must have been distracted, or whatever. Rather than let's take a step back and look in the mirror and, as you say, learn those lessons of, well, was this foreseeable actually, if we go down into some deeper analysis?
Yeah, like, should we have rules about shoes? Fine. Why are they rushing? Are they tired? Are they overworked? Has someone not turned up today and we haven't got an extra person in? One can always go down to the more root causes of that, which is, if you blame the person, you never look at the systems and processes that people have to work within. The NHS at the moment have got a new patient safety framework. It's got 5 names and I can't remember all of it. But their patient safety framework, based on, things go wrong in the NHS all the time. I had an operation a couple of years ago, nothing very serious, but I had 4 little black dots drawn on my body so that people knew, and that for me is a lovely lesson learned. Don't cut the wrong arm off. Don't, cut into someone's body in the wrong place. And so, a Sharpie was used to draw on me, and that's a lesson. The NHS's new patient safety framework is aimed at looking at organisational design. It's not aimed at looking at the individual. It is what are the systems and the processes that we force people into, that sausage factory that we force people into working. And is there something wrong about that makes those mistakes more likely? And I love that, and I want to do that within our organisation. I want to stop looking at individuals. Sometimes we have to, and I get that there is an accountability, but the bigger context for me is always, how do we force them to work? If we know someone is overworked and stressed, then we need to be, there's the risk. We know what the risk is. We need to be doing something about that.
Yeah, because nobody goes to work with the intention of hurting themselves or other people. So we've got to remember that.
You'll see that's my kind of anti-libertarian thing. There is individual accountability. However, we're a charity, but we're a big organisation, and there are people who don't do the frontline job, like myself, whose job it is to provide that safe way of working, safe system of work, as we say in health and safety, that safe way of working, so that people go home as safe as when they arrived. And that goes wrong sometimes, and it goes wrong with individuals, or it goes wrong with teams, and it's that learning that, how has it gone wrong and what can we do to make it less likely to happen in the future? I'm not Pollyanna. I don't think everything's going to be great and that no one will ever be hurt again.
No.
People are people, and they bring themselves to work, their strengths and their challenges. But but I'm what I would define as optimistically discontent with how things are. I'm discontent. I want it to be better, and I'm optimistic that it can be. But I'm realistic in that thing. It won't all disappear. Safety won't all be 100% great.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. I might even entitle our podcast "Being Optimistically Discontent" in
Yeah.
and around health and safety. I think that's a
I
good
would,
phrase.
I would be happy for you to do that. I'm known, as a friend of mine called it, for shamelessly denuding people of their expertise and stealing things. So I'm absolutely happy if you do it to me.
That's basically what you've got to do in this kind of thing. It's because what you want is to, and this is going to be a segue, is to engage people and make them think, oh, that's interesting, and that could be relevant to me. And the reason that's a segue is because one of the other topics that we spoke about before was, and I think there's a lesson here from politics, is about meeting people where they're at, distilling information into communications that can be understood and actually have the impact. And I think you talked about going to their party, I think was the expression
Yes.
that you used. Can you
Yeah.
give us your philosophy on that?
Yeah, one has to. I mean, quoting the health and safety at work act as boring, and actually, if someone talks to me at a party like that, I'm off. It's about, my job is to be useful and not to show off. And I'm not quoting any of my wonderful health and safety colleagues at all. But talking about the act, or you have to, or it's against the law, for me, is not effective in any way. People who get in contact with me, I'm hugely grateful that they do, because I'm the head of health and safety. So there are going to be some ideas that they have about me. Bit dull, doesn't know what I do, is probably going to give me a bit of a lecture. So I
Yeah.
work really hard to do and be none of those things. And so when you've got someone who knows about health and who knows about social care but doesn't know about health and safety, as I say, I go to their party. Tell me what's happening. Tell me person to person what's happening. What's happening with the person that you're supporting. Tell me what's happening with you, and let's work out what we can do. And so one has to gain their trust. And so if I always say to people, if I say something to you, if I recommend something to you, I will then follow up in an email. You will never have to say, Shonagh said this to me on the 20th of April, 2023, and I say, well, I didn't. There won't be that. So one has to build up that trust. But you also have to work out where they're at, what they're working at. And what I always say to them is, you're the experts in where you work. You know what the building looks like, you know what the person looks like, you know what's happening at 8 in the morning or at 4 at night. Talk to me about all of that, and I'll bring, usually don't talk to them about my scaffolding, but I'll bring my scaffolding to that conversation. So how can we best make sure that you're safe or that they're safe? And just something I was talking about yesterday is a guy we support whose behaviour has changed, and it may put his tenancy at risk. He may not be able to live where he lives. And so instead of saying he's quite different and his behaviour is this, that, or the other, what we're talking about is, how do we support him well so that he is a neighbour that is welcomed by the people he lives with, rather than the weird guy that lives at the end of the corridor, because that's how people will be seeing him at the moment. So it's talking to the staff team, saying, okay, how do you support him? How do we keep you safe in terms of how we support him when you know he's not very happy, and how do we support him to be seen as a valuable member of society, somebody that people would want to know rather than someone that they would avoid. So health and safety is really interesting within social care, because it's not slips and trips, it's not bogs and basins, you know, it's that big person-centered stuff. And you know, I'm hoping that we can work on that, because it's one thing I just want to touch on. Our staff are really lucky, because every day they support people to live the kind of life that they want to. And those little moments of magic, they get them. I hardly ever get those. I don't do that frontline job. So if a staff member gets what I'm talking about and moves to something safer, that's my moment of magic. If this guy is able to stay in his house and our support is designed better to maintain his safety and ours, that's my moment of magic. And I hope you have that in your job, but for me, that's what makes my job worth doing. Those little, oh man, we've made a difference. I have made a difference. That's not to say that the SHP award wasn't a moment of magic. It absolutely was, and it really was, and I enjoyed that. They come along once every few years, if you're lucky, if you're lucky at all. That satisfaction, that's why you do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting, isn't it, to think about the fact that, what we're doing is sometimes those moments of magic don't appear because they're actually driven by us having prevented something rather than done something. So you've got to kind of, and it's going back to where we started with kind of appreciation, I suppose, is you've got to understand that what we're doing is valuable, and you've got to derive those moments of magic. I love that phrase from what you're doing, but also knowing that you can't necessarily put it up on the wall because actually you've affected somebody who's a long way away, or you've actually affected something from not happening, and therefore it doesn't exist.
And I mean, I suppose that's why I'm lucky in this empathetic organisation, because people are generous. That people I work with are generous. You'll get something back saying, thanks very much for that. In fact, I couldn't believe it this morning. I got an email saying, really looking forward to you coming back to Cornwall. And I was thinking, that's unusual for a health and safety person. We're looking forward to you coming back. And so I went back and said, thank you very much. You've made my day. I shall definitely be down there. That I landed well in a social care organisation. I'm different from them. They know I am. If something bad happens, it's not my job to become anxious about it. I was trying to think of a better word without saying other people do. But my job is to be steady when something happens, and that is my job, and that's where I naturally sit in that kind of building. And I'm calm, and I'm a steady point for other people when things have gone wrong, because they do.
Of course, zero. Yeah, we've spoken on the podcast before about the fallacy of zero harm, which in your sector is particularly interesting, isn't it? Because you might be able to do something that makes someone's life safer from a physical injury risk perspective, but it lessens or dampens their life in another way, and therefore they're not so fulfilled, and therefore you're doing harm to them mentally.
Yeah, well, that's where our stamp of support came in. They try things, act reasonably, and we'll always support you. So we're a leader in the social care sector in terms of something called person-centred risk. So we do risk taking with people. So that's different from. So there's things that, if I do the difference, there are things that are important to people, things that they want to do, and there are things that are important for people. And so the important fors are that people get the right medication, they're not dropped, they don't fall out of a window, they don't trip over a carpet. So all of that is in our sphere. We'll make sure that whatever we do to support you is done safely. Important too, I want a job, I want a home, I want a relationship, I want a boyfriend, I want to get married, I want a girlfriend, I want a bungee jump, whatever, I want to go on a cruise. All the things that make our lives worth living, make everyone's lives worth living, but they come with a risk. And so when I talk about this, I always say, there's 20 people in the room, anyone here ever fallen in love with someone they shouldn't have fallen in love with? Quoting the Buzzcocks. Anyone ever, because actually that happens. And we who are not in receipt of support usually learn these lessons during teenage, when it's brutal. And you fancy someone and they don't look at you, or you get together with them and they pack you in, or whatever, or one night stands or whatever, right? And so in terms of person-centred risk, what can stop people trying all those things that we try in life is love, families saying, "Oh, I don't want him to be disappointed, and I don't want him to get the bad things that happen to us in life. So can we protect them?" And I understand that, but there's also within our staff, there will be a worry that if someone comes a cropper in anything, that they will be blamed. And one can understand that in the organisation. I can talk about we're a no blame organisation, but the tabloids wouldn't think that. That would be a lovely headline of United Response encouraged people to, I don't know, do this, that, or the other, and they came a cropper. And so there are ways that people are stopped from trying things, not because of them and not because of their fear, and not even because they don't want to do things. And so trying to encourage our staff to look at, if someone wants to bungee jump, which I did myself, once tried, never doing it again, but it was okay. If someone wants to try a bungee jump, then as long as you're going to a company like I went to, and you're not thinking, I'll just tie something off that bridge and fling them over, reasonable, unreasonable. So that's where our stamp of support comes in. And one of the great parts of my job is that people will come and say, not sure this is health and safety, but do you think this is reasonable? This risk taking is reasonable in terms of that person. And it doesn't always go brilliantly, Christian. Sometimes it doesn't go well. Someone starts a job and it just doesn't suit them, or they don't suit the organisation, and it doesn't work. But actually, that's real life.
Yeah, it is, and we live in a world of risk, and actually, without risk, there's no reward, is there? So you can sit in a dark room all day long and never do anything, but that's not going to be very rewarding.
No. If you're dodgy on your pins and you sit in a wheelchair, you'll never fall over. But where's the fun in that? Where's the if you can actually walk, and we can support you to walk with equipment, let's do that, rather than disabling you out in society. So but person-centered risk is great, actually. It's exciting. It's a bumpy ride every now and again, and it doesn't always work.
No, but there's some great lessons that people can learn in any sector from taking that approach. So definitely enjoyed that. Well, look, thank you so much, Shonagh. It's been a really great conversation. We've covered a lot today. I've certainly come away with lots of thinking and inspiration, so I'm sure the audience will as well. If people wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do it? And is there anything you wanted to recommend or plug or anything like that?
I'm on LinkedIn, so that would be the best way, and I'm really happy to chat to people. Learning from people and with people is absolutely my thing. So if people would like to, nothing particularly I want to plug. No, not particularly. SHP and IOS are great. I really like them, and I go to a lot of things. I'm going off to the health and safety event in Birmingham in a couple of weeks' time. So if
I'll be there for that. So let's have a coffee.
I shall look you up and have a coffee and cake, Christian. That's what we'll have. Yeah,
well, I love a good cake, but I suspect I'll have quite a few. I probably won't even have coffees with everybody, because otherwise I'll be in some sort of caffeine overload. Thinking about my person-centered risk, that's probably not the best thing for me.
Okay.
But we'll definitely meet up. And anyone else that's going to be there, then drop us a line, and we'd be delighted to meet up as well. Great. Well, thanks very much again, Shonagh. Really enjoyed it, and hope everyone that has joined us on this episode enjoyed it as well. And we'll see you again for the next one. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the Safety and Risk Success podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit follow and do share on social media. Does anyone you know spring to mind as a great guest, even yourself? If so, please contact us on podcast@slipsafety.co.uk. See you next week for another episode.